The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the dense forest as 5 teenagers, armed with cameras and flashlights, ventured into the infamous Blackwood Forest. The air was thick with tension and excitement, each step crunching on fallen leaves and snapping twigs echoed ominously in the night. They were there to film a video for their Paranormal YouTube channel, hoping to capture proof of the supernatural. "I can't believe we're actually doing this," Jenna whispered, her voice trembling slightly. She adjusted her camera, scanning the surrounding trees. The forest was dense, the trees seeming to close in on them, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out to snatch them. "Relax, it's just a forest," Mark replied, though he didn't sound entirely convinced himself. He was the leader of their group, always pushing them to take risks for the sake of their channel. He glanced at the map they had printed from the internet, the legend of Blackwood Forest still fresh in his mind. "Yeah, just a forest that's supposedly haunted," Danny chimed in, a nervous chuckle escaping his lips. He was the skeptic of the group, always needing concrete evidence to believe in anything supernatural. He fiddled with his flashlight, the beam cutting through the thick fog that clung to the ground. Lisa, the quiet one, was filming everything, her camera never wavering as it captured their every move. She had an eye for detail, always looking for the perfect shot to enhance their videos. Beside her, Sam, the tech geek, was checking the equipment, making sure everything was working perfectly. He had rigged up some motion sensors and EVP recorders, hoping to catch any signs of paranormal activity. They walked deeper into the forest, the trees closing in around them, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The wind howled through the leaves, creating an unsettling symphony of whispers. As they pressed on, an overwhelming sense of being watched settled over them. "Let's split up and cover more ground," Mark suggested, trying to sound confident. "We'll meet back here in an hour." The group hesitated but eventually agreed, splitting into pairs. Jenna and Mark went one way, while Danny and Lisa went another, leaving Sam to cover the area near their starting point. As Jenna and Mark walked deeper into the forest, the trees seemed to grow taller and more menacing. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Shadows danced at the edges of their vision, making Jenna's heart race. "Do you think the stories are true?" Jenna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Stories are just stories," Mark replied, though his eyes darted nervously around the darkened forest. "We need to focus on getting good footage." Jenna glanced around nervously. "Maybe, but sometimes stories have a grain of truth to them." Meanwhile, Danny and Lisa moved cautiously through the trees, their flashlights casting long, eerie shadows. Danny tried to lighten the mood with jokes, but Lisa remained focused, scanning the area for any signs of movement. "Do you ever wonder why people keep coming here if it's so dangerous?" Danny asked, his voice tinged with curiosity. "People are drawn to the unknown," Lisa replied, her camera trained on the path ahead. "And sometimes, curiosity gets the better of them. Or maybe people just like a good scare," Danny added with a grin, though his eyes showed a hint of nervousness. Back at the starting point, Sam was setting up his equipment, his face illuminated by the soft glow of his laptop screen. He placed motion sensors around the perimeter, hoping to catch any signs of movement. The forest was unnervingly silent, the only sound the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. As time passed, the forest seemed to grow darker and more menacing. Jenna and Mark wandered through the trees, calling out to the others, but there was no response. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the silence. "That was Lisa," Jenna gasped, fear gripping her heart. They sprinted toward the sound, but when they arrived, there was no sign of Lisa or Danny, only Lisa's camera lying on the ground, still recording. Mark picked it up, his hands shaking. "What the hell is going on?" "Let's go back to the meeting point," Jenna suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. They hurried back, only to find Sam's equipment scattered across the forest floor, but no sign of Sam. Panic set in. "We need to get out of here," Mark insisted. They turned to leave, but the path they had come down now seemed unfamiliar, the trees shifting and twisting around them. They searched frantically for Sam, calling his name. Eventually, they stumbled upon his flashlight lying on the ground, its light flickering weakly. It was clear that Sam had encountered something terrifying. Horror-stricken, Jenna and Mark pressed on, determined to find Danny and Lisa. Hours felt like days as they stumbled through the forest, their flashlights flickering. One by one, Mark and Jenna's fears grew more pronounced, shadows playing tricks on their minds. Jenna clung to Mark, their breaths coming in short, panicked gasps. They eventually found Lisa and Danny's cameras, still recording. The footage showed them being separated and lost in the dense forest, calling out for each other in growing panic. And then Mark disappeared. Jenna turned around, and he was simply gone, as if the forest had swallowed him whole. She screamed, calling his name, but there was only silence. Desperation fueled Jenna's steps as she tried to find her way out. Every turn seemed to lead her deeper into the forest's grasp. Her flashlight finally died, leaving her in complete darkness. She sank to the ground, sobbing, feeling utterly alone. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was Mark. Relief washed over Jenna, but something about him seemed different. His eyes glowed with an unnatural light, his movements jerky and unnatural. "Mark?" Jenna's voice trembled. "It's okay, Jenna," Mark said, his voice a strange echo of his usual tone. "We're going to be all right." As Mark approached, Jenna noticed his hands were stained with something dark. Her heart pounded in her chest as realization dawned on her. This wasn't Mark. This was something else, something wearing his skin. "Stay away from me," she screamed, stumbling backward. But it was too late. The entity that had possessed Mark lunged at her, its grip cold and unyielding. Jenna struggled, but she was no match for its strength. As darkness enveloped her, she heard the forest whispering, a sinister laughter echoing through the trees. Mark woke up on the cold, hard ground, a throbbing pain in his head. The forest was eerily silent. He sat up slowly, blinking as his eyes adjusted to the dim light. The sight before him made his blood run cold. Surrounding him were the lifeless bodies of his friends Jenna, Danny, Lisa, and Sam. Their faces frozen in terror, their bodies still. His hands were covered in something dark, his clothes stained. His heart pounded in his chest as he tried to piece together what had happened. Flashes of memory came back to him, screams, his friends begging for their lives, his own hands moving against his will. "No, no," Mark whispered, tears streaming down his face. "What have I done?" A chilling laughter echoed through the trees, and a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness. It was the spirit of the forest, a malevolent entity with eyes that glowed with an unholy light. "Why?" Mark asked, his voice shaking. "Why did you make me do this?" The spirit's voice was a cold, rasping whisper. "Because you trespassed into my domain, and I needed a vessel to carry out my will. You were weak, easily manipulated. Your friends suffered because of your foolishness." Mark's eyes filled with rage and despair. "You're a monster." The spirit's laughter grew louder. "And now you will join them." Mark tried to stand, to fight back, but his body wouldn't obey. The spirit reached out, its shadowy hand closing around his throat. Mark gasped for air, his vision blurring. "You'll pay for what you've done," Mark choked out, his voice barely audible. The spirit's grip tightened. "You already have." With a final crushing squeeze, the spirit ended Mark's life, letting his lifeless body fall to the ground among the others. The forest grew silent once more, the spirit retreating into the shadows, satisfied with the night's work. In the end, it was not the forest that had taken them, but the spirit that lurked within, possessing one of their own to carry out its malevolent will. The footage from Lisa's camera was later found, showing the horrifying truth of what had transpired. The haunted forest claimed another set of victims, leaving their tragic tale to become another legend in the twisted embrace of Blackwood Forest. Please like and subscribe to the channel to get notifications on new videos.